Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, The Difference Between Endpoint Protection and Traditional Antivirus. My name is Chris Brown from Contact Limited, and I'll be your host for today's webinar, together with my colleague, Colin Foster, and our speaker, Ben Charles from SentinelOne. Ben's a security engineer at SentinelOne. He's got over 15 years experience in endpoint and firewall technologies, so he really understands the challenges of transforming and securing large organizations' critical infrastructure. So in today's webinar, we'll be running through the big differences between traditional antivirus products, the products we almost grew up with, and today's intelligent high technology endpoint protection solutions, and ultimately what it takes to secure your users and indeed endpoints. We're all aware of the challenges we face, and as one of your primary attack services, we know endpoint security is high on the agenda for every type of business. So I'm sure this will be a very helpful session. Okay. So just as some of the things that we'll be covering, really it's about the difference between signature-based and behavior-based detection. It's a fundamental difference in kind of traditional or legacy antivirus and endpoint protection solutions, and really just how we address the challenges that we face today. And then we'll have a run through of the very impressive SentinelOne platform. So, as a brief introduction to Contact, we're a specialist full-service cybersecurity company operating 24/7 eyes on screen from our secure SOC in Northampton. And in addition to our SOC team, we support clients with the leading technologies, which means full on-site deployment, plus 3-tiered service desk. So in addition to our partnership with SentinelOne, we provide full house cybersecurity services from penetration testing, phishing as a service, to threat management solutions and fully managed SOC services. Right, okay, so today we're talking about the difference between traditional antivirus and endpoint protection. As probably the brightest, fastest growing endpoint security provider at the moment, we're delighted to have Ben Charles from SentinelOne here with us today. So without further ado, I'd like to stop talking and hand you over to Ben.
So good morning, everyone. As Chris mentioned, I'm Ben Charles. I'm a pre-sales engineer at SentinelOne, and I'm going to cover the technical aspects and the differences between your more traditional and your legacy type of antivirus products and the kind of new breed, next generation endpoint protection products such as SentinelOne. So firstly, it's important to understand what the differences between these different types of technology are, and how they've gone about securing the enterprise. Now, signature-based and legacy types of AVs are very well known. They've been around in the marketplace for over 30 years now, very widely used and very widely understood. And the way that these work is they're looking at patterns, they're looking at hashes, and they're looking at signatures of known malicious files. So as a file drops onto your system, as it's downloaded, as it's copied on, it will check against the hash of that file or its signature effectively to determine whether it's something that is known bad or is unknown. This gives you quite a good, or used to give you quite a good protection rate against traditional types of malware, but the bad guys and technology has advanced so much over the last 30 years that this is becoming unmanageable and unscalable. There's over 1 million new pieces of malware every day, and it's very easy to change a known piece of malware to an unknown piece of malware. Just by adding some additional characters into the file will effectively change the signature and behavior of that particular piece of malware. And trying to manage these legacy solutions and trying to manage these more signature-based protections to cope with this rise in these new signatures and these new pieces of malware becomes unmanageable at scale. So rather than just using signatures, it's better to be able to use a multitude of different types of technologies, all baked into one single agent and one single product. So what we have the ability to use behavioral modeling and artificial intelligence to actually then look at the behaviors and look at the patterns of files rather than looking at the specific signature that is specific to that one particular file. And by being able to do this and utilizing the power of artificial intelligence and behavioral-based monitoring, we're able to look at those more advanced attacks, and we're able to look at those suspicious behaviors, and we're be able to classify whether those are benign or malicious based on what we know around behaviors that machines do, that users do, and that malware does on a machine. So these are the critical differences between how a next generation type platform such as SentinelOne and a more legacy solution works. The power behind artificial intelligence to be able to look at all of these different types of behaviors and patterns and characteristics of files, rather than looking at, is this something that I've seen before, or is this something that is new that I don't know about? So SentinelOne, as I've kind of covered briefly in the last slide, is an endpoint protection platform. So we're classed as one of the next generation endpoint protection platforms, and we're designed and we're built to be completely autonomous on the endpoint. So very little user interaction and updates and protection mechanisms. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to help you and try to help organizations by reducing the amount of time that it takes to look at alerts, that it takes to manage the platform, and that it takes to detect and mitigate against malware and malicious attacks. So we're all aware that we all have too little time. There's a lack of security staff within inside the organization, and those staff are not just looking at endpoint, they're looking at network security, they're looking at email security, they're looking at a whole raft of other things. So too few staff with too little time, and everything has to be fast. Everyone's used to having blisteringly fast internet connections, fast computers. It's very different from how it used to be when we had just the traditional legacy AV products and slower machines. End user tolerance is very critical nowadays. So what are we trying to do? There's many threats out there, as we mentioned, with the differences between the legacy types AV and the signature-based type platforms. There's lots and lots of threats. With a traditional product, that means downloading new databases, making sure all of your machines are up to date to be able to protect against those threats. And there's only so many signatures that you can store on a machine. And there's multiple different machines. There's servers, there's laptops, there's desktops, there's legacy platforms. So we're looking at multiple different types of devices to try and secure. And the engineer's not just looking at those endpoints, they're looking at all of the problems across the entire network, entry points, access points. And because most devices are mobile now, they're outside the organization, people are working from home, we need to be able to secure those devices outside of the organization as well. And we see that fileless attacks are on the way up. By a fileless attack, I mean this is something where the hacker or the malicious actor is not trying to use a file or something physical that is left on disk. So there's no signature, that's solely behavioral based. And this is one of the reasons why SentinelOne was founded, to be able to protect against these types of fileless attacks, using memory exploits, scripts with inside documents, macros, built-in OS tools like PowerShell and Terminal with inside Mac. So there's no files that are written to disk, and everything is done solely in memory. So we need to be able to use those behavioral based and that artificial intelligence to locally mitigate those against the attack. So the endpoint market, from the split of the more traditional based signature mechanisms, kind of split into two different types of protection. So you had your pure sort of pre-execution prevention, anything that writes to disk, anything that's copied onto the onto the platform, we're going to stop that from running, and we're going to mitigate against that. And that's utilizing artificial intelligence to look at the metadata of files to be able to understand whether that file is benign or malicious without using a signature, whether that file has been seen before or whether it's brand new, to be able to make a decision as to whether that's malicious. You then had the other end of the spectrum, which was, I'm going to let everything run on the endpoint, and then I'm going to detect whether that is benign or malicious. And I'm going to tell everyone that this has happened, and we can take steps after the fact that it's happened. And where we sit as SentinelOne is we cover both of these types of technologies within one single agent. So we have the pure pre-execution prevention, stopping everything that we can determine as bad before it runs on the system. But then for the memory-based attacks, those that don't have signatures, those that don't have files that write to disk, we then use the detect and respond to be able to detect and kill at machine speed in real time those malicious attacks and those malicious behaviors on the endpoint themselves. So we try to make everything completely simple and very, very easy to use with SentinelOne. It's a single agent that covers all of our technology. So everything that is endpoint protection and endpoint detection and response is all built in with one single engine, one single policy that enables us to prevent, detect, and respond to all pieces of malicious activity happening on the machine. And this gives you the ability to do automated, but also manual threat hunting. So everything that we see as malicious, we can automate, and we can kill and quarantine, and we can stop those running processes, and we can stop those files from causing harm to your machine. But then we can also do manual threat hunting on top of that to look for other indicators of compromise. Has this user been logging on to different machines? Have they been going to particular websites? Have they clicked on phishing links? All of this data is captured and is able to be searched on across the estate. And what's very unique to SentinelOne is all of this intelligence is done locally on the endpoint itself. We're not reliant on the power of the cloud to be able to determine whether something's benign or malicious. So that then gives us the ability to protect online or whether the device is offline as well. We provide different management solutions, whether it's cloud or if you have sensitive infrastructure, we can provide an on-premise management platform as well. Everything is fully driven via APIs. So anything that we want to integrate, any connectivity or any logging or additional information we want to get, we can pull out through the API, and these are bi-directional. And we can create multi-site platforms as well. So with SentinelOne, what we're trying to do is really future define autonomous protection. So giving detection and protection in real time at machine speed on the endpoint. So protecting against file type bits of malware, fileless malware, online and offline at machine speed, so that we can quickly and we can remove those threats from the endpoint. And we can give you visibility into encrypted URL traffic and threat hunt across everything that's happening on the machine itself. All using one single lightweight agent with very, very simple workflows, very simple policies to be able to save time and have fewer agents and fewer impact on the end user. And everything can be automated through the policy. So we have as many workflows and APIs to be able to automate those capabilities through the endpoint itself. So this is really how the technology works. And if you're looking at endpoint protection, this is what SentinelOne is doing all in one single agent. So you can look at it as before, during, and after. So we can utilize our static AI. So this is our pre-execution attack prevention, utilizing artificial intelligence to look at the metadata of files and to be able to protect against those known and unknown attacks. And we roll some reputational based technologies in there, but we utilize signatures from elsewhere to be able to amalgamate that with the static AI. And this gives us a very high protection rate against file bits of malware. We then have the during, so the on execution process protection. So we hook into every single process that happens on the machine, every keystroke, every memory call, every processor call, every application, and we monitor everything that's happening with those utilizing our behavioral AI engine. And this is all done locally on the machine with very, very minimal performance impact. This then gives us the ability to kill and quarantine and stop those malicious and those fileless types of attacks. And then after we give you full visibility, remediation, and with inside Windows environments, the ability to roll that system back. So if you wanted to take the steps to remediate anything that had happened on the endpoint, or if you wanted to roll it back to a clean time before we'd seen any malicious activity on there, we can do that automatically. We can do that manually through the console itself. And these are just the steps that response and rollback takes. So being able to isolate the endpoints off of the network, utilizing disconnect from network, being able to kill any offending processes, quarantine any files, remediate everything that happens, utilizing our what we call active EDR, active threat protection, by creating the workflow of everything that happened from the initial spawning process to the very end where we decide that it's malicious, being able to remediate that back to its very starting process. And then with inside Windows systems, being able to roll that back and reverting it back to a safe environment. And everything with inside SentinelOne is designed to be API driven and integrated with other ecosystems. So we're trying to create a platform that not only gives you endpoint protection, but can also feed that data in and bolster the investments you've made in other security technologies, such as your firewalls, such as your orchestration tools, covering multiple different platforms. And this is just a small subset of the partners that we and other vendors that we integrate with at the moment. I'll hand back over to Chris, who's going to cover off the Q&As. So thank you for your time, and if you've got any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box.
That's great, Ben. Thank you very much. Really excellent. So first question, how do you validate versus an existing AV deployment?
So there's a number of ways that we can validate against this. Typically, this is done during proof of concepts and testing. We can run side by side with traditional products as well. However, we are classed as a legacy AV replacement tool. So typically, we would do those types of engagements through demos and proof of concepts to show what the legacy AV is missing and what we can detect and what we show as SentinelOne. Fantastic.
That neatly dovetails into the next question. So what does the POC process look like?
So POC process is very straightforward. You typically reach out to your contacts at Contact. We would then spin up a cloud management instance where we can connect your devices and run through sort of some standard testing, success criteria, and then typically POCs will run for 21 days.
Okay, that's great. So I've got a question from it says, so how would your IT team be alerted to an issue with an endpoint?
So there's multiple ways that we can alert. So we can either alert out through emails, which can alert into either a team email inbox, or it can go into a ticketing system. We also have integrations with the likes of ServiceNow, so we can integrate with those, and we integrate with Seams and through syslog as well. So there's multiple ways that that teams can be alerted based on their preferences for what they currently use.
Okay, great, thank you. I think that's it. Oh no, we just got another question. So what does the enrollment process look like for large deployments?
So enrollment's very straightforward. So typically we would enroll this out through whichever software distribution tool you use internally, whether that's Group Policy, SCCM, Jamf for Mac. Very, very quick enrollment process. I've done some enrollments with customers recently where we've pushed out 80,000 endpoints in less than 2 weeks with no issues. So enrollment's a very, very quick process.
Okay, I think that's probably all the questions that we're going to have today. So thank you very much to everybody. Thank you very much to Ben, and thank you very much to everybody who's attended. We'll be circulating the copy of the slides and the video after this event. But thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.